We talked a little bit about CPR. I want to say that I used to teach CPR, so I know a little about it. And in the places where I worked for going back 20-some years, I had to learn CPR. Not only did I teach it, but I also had to remain certified, which means I had to do it every year. In a hospital, you have to do it every year. And also I was a lifeguard instructor. Guess what you teach to your lifeguard? You teach CPR. So I do know a little bit about it. But what I want to talk to you about today is something you might be getting the sense that we're talking here about those hearts and what do they mean? The white heart and the red heart. This is the time of the year when we think about the heart, about loving, and it's a little bit, frivolous. It's not so deep, right? But I'm here to talk to you about some deep stuff. And you might have gotten that idea right here in these readings, because we're talking about really saving life. Whose life? Whose life am I talking about? I'm actually talking about our life, our own very life, and possibly saving someone else's life. So it's a dual thing. And so when I'm talking about saving life, I'm going to talk a little bit about CPR because it is so, 20 years I've been doing CPR. I know about it. I taught it. So it is important to understand, if you look at your program, look at that diagram. Look at that diagram. The heart and the lungs are inextricably connected. You cannot have life without breath, without your lungs putting air into oxygenating the blood. And you cannot continue in the physical life if your heart is not pumping. I'm using a word that I want you to remember, pumping. Because you see, when you are needing to do CPR, you are having to do either one or both of these. You either have to do, first you do the check, you realize that somebody is down, they're not responsive, you call 911 or you send somebody to 911. You call 911 when? Do you all remember what I said to the children? It's important. If you find somebody down and you're alone, that's what you do first. By the way, that's a change. That was a change some years ago because of the reasons that we'll be talking about in a little bit. So you are either having to give breath only because you detect after you check the person, somebody has been dispatched to call 911, you're checking their breathing, you're not feeling the breath on your cheek, but you're feeling a heartbeat. If you would, take your little index finger and third finger and place it in the groove of your throat. Can you feel your heart? I can't because I'm talking. Can you feel it? Okay, that's where you check to see if somebody has a heart beating. Now, if there is no heartbeat and there's no breathing, then you do both breath and compressions. Now, here's where I want to depart a little bit. So, in order to save a life, you must give breath when you find somebody on the ground, and possibly you may need to do compressions to move the heart. What happens if you do nothing? person would die. Right. So let's take this on the correspondential level. We know that breath, the white parts correspond, the whiteness corresponds to truth, right? You know that's pretty much the case. And I don't think there is even a opposite sense for white. Light, white always corresponds to truth, depending on how it is placed in the writings or in the word itself, in the scriptures. It may be the highest divine truth, which was the case with the Israelites seeing the light of the Lord in front of them when they were moving in the form of the clouds or in the form of the fire at night. So white corresponds to breath. The lungs deliver the breath to the heart. Well, actually to the blood, and the blood, fresh blood going to the heart and then throughout the whole body, which is the way we are constant. That's how we live. That's how we remain alive. Now, if you were to take a CPR course, how many of you had it recently? When did you have it? Like, you have to have it every year, like, right?
I think it's every couple years.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you've had it not that long ago, and did you do it with Heart Saver or with Red Cross?
Red Cross.
Okay. Okay, so there is differences between the Heart Saver and the Red Cross. I've done both. There is a difference. And so Karen will back me up on this. If you take CPR, you should also be getting a lesson about what is going on in the body when somebody is suspected that there is cardiac arrest. So I want you to just, if you can, place your hand on your heart, if you could not have a lot of clothes on. Can you feel your heart beating if you put it right over your heart? No. I only feel it if I put it to the car tub. So what's happening if there is that when checking somebody you're finding unresponsive, you check the breath, there is no breath, you cannot detect a heartbeat, and you would be checking it here, not on the chest. This is where it's most noticeable. What's going on is that the heart has not stopped. It's fibrillating. And when it's fibrillating, it is not pumping, which is the life of the heart. You know, without that pumping motion, sending blood throughout the brain and throughout the whole body, life stops. And that is why the newest CPR, which is the one that I've learned about a few years ago, it is highly controversial. So I want to say that right up front. And you did not learn it in Red Cross. Red Cross does not sign on to this. Did you hear about it? Compressions only?
Yeah, that's what they teach us.
In Red Cross does that?
Well, at the hospital.
Yeah, no, we're not.
I was going to say that they have huge issues. They have issues with it. So this is what I want to talk about, because that is the whole point. The reason I know about this, and because I've done this, is that it is an amazing way to save a life. Because you get the pumping going. Compressions only. No breath. Because let's go back. If you find somebody on the ground, and especially if they're somebody in their mid-50s, that is most likely there is a cardiac issue. And you're not going to save their life by doing breaths and compressions. You've got to get the pump the heart. And you do that a certain way. You lock your fingers, put it right over the chest, and you do it continuously and really, really fast. Is this hard work? You bet. But it will save a life. You know, I chose that song for that reason. The heart corresponds to love. And so here I'm going to jump right over to that correspondence. Without love in your life, without doing things from love, in obedience to commandments, you're spiritually dying. And that's the critical thing. So how do you get your spiritual life going again? Revive it. How do you do that? There, I think it is in the song, right there. Action in love. Do you need truth? You bet. You need both to have spiritual life. You must go to the scriptures, you must read, you must study, but then, and you need to do that to have life, spiritual life, just as you need for your physical life, you must have your heart pumping. You must be using your love, your passions to do work, to serve the neighbor, and also to serve yourself, your own spiritual life. I think one of the things that I think interesting is that you can actually physically save your own life if you feel that you have a heart attack. I don't know if I would do it. I mean, I don't know. I have no clue if I would do it. But you can actually lean over a chair where you're hitting your chest against the chair and pumping yourself against the chair, that hard surface. And you can literally stay alive that way. Now, I could go on. As I said, I used to teach CPR, so I do know a little bit about it. I haven't taught it in a while. But spiritually for us, as individuals in the church and as a church body, in order for the church within us, in our deepest internal parts, we must have both. We must have truths that we live by and love to live by. In other words, the connection of the heart to the lungs, to the understanding, the truths that come to us, and also for our lives as individuals in the church. We must have an understanding. We must not think, oh, well, we know it all. It needs to be a continuous process. Breath must go into the heart, into the cells, into the blood, in order to keep it pumping with fresh blood, with fresh oxygenated blood. Well, what about the church as a body? Do you think it holds true for that as well? You know, we are often called, I call our church a cerebral church. We like to think about the truths. We like to talk about the truths. But you know, one thing I've noticed in this community is that you all get this. You all know that it is all about love in action. Getting that together. And that, I believe, is what will revive our church. I have a sense that the church body itself needs a little reviving. That's my own personal opinion. How do we do that? It's the same, I believe, for the church as a body, as an organization. It needs to get out of the books and get to work among our neighbors, very much as this very simple song. By the way, you notice where it came from?
Ghana.
Yeah. It is very well known throughout churches. And it is, I think, a beautiful message in itself. So my prayer and my hope is that we go home with an understanding that we all can play a role in saving our own spiritual life. And by the way, you could save someone else's life by doing compressions only. You know what? You don't even need a certificate. It is so simple. By the way, that's probably why it is so controversial. This originated in my alma mater, University of Arizona started it, so that's the reason I know about it. And because we were all advised to use compressions only if we need to do any kind of CPR. In other words, folks, you don't need to go to school, but you do need to learn how to do this. Remember what I said to the children, to all of us, and it's a reminder. Most likely, if you ever have to do CPR or compressions only, it'll be to someone you love. It'll be someone in your family because you're around them the most. And that is so true for our spiritual life. You know, we can revive each other by connecting. I love what Jane did. So all our names are there. We are connected. And you know what? That is the beauty of celebrating that.